Recently, I was asked to speak in an event and share some of the things I really wish I could go back and tell myself in the beginning year of our homeschool journey. When I was first asked what I would share, I wasn't sure if I could come up with much, but after some thought, I sat down and I started writing, and before I knew it, I had like 25 or so, like 25 to 30 tips that I really wish I could go back and tell myself. But before I jump in, I should tell you that both my husband and I are homeschool graduates and have been homeschooling our brood for nearly 12 years now. We have kids in every level right now: high school, middle, elementary, and preschool. Our first years were very, very rocky for a variety of reasons. Some of the things I'm sharing today are personal, and they're going to be a little bit of a reflection of that, and they may not resonate with everybody, but I think that out of all of the tips that I have here today, I think there will be a little something for everyone here. Okay, so one of the first things I really wish I could go back and tell myself is that I wasn't going to be able to do everything myself. I really thought I was going to be able to, and I wish I could go back and say, hey, you're not going to be able to do it all yourself through all the years, and that it's okay. It would have really helped me to know this, and I wish I knew that it was okay to just ask for help and who to ask for help. For example, my husband, instead of asking him for the help I needed and being really specific with him, I always felt like I needed to do it all and figure it out for myself. And I think part of that has to do with the era that we were raised in. Things are different than they were when I was being homeschooled in the 80s and part of the 90s. And the standards have changed. Eventually, I got to a point in my own journey where I felt like a failure because I needed help. And even recently, I went through this, and I got to a place where I needed even more help than I thought I was going to. And it took me 2 days to stop crying and feeling like a failure. Finally, I realized, wait a minute, I've been doing this successfully pretty much on my own for 12 years in this year. Needing help doesn't mean failure. It means that you're human and you just need a little help. Okay, so number 2, the second thing I would like to go back and tell myself is that I was going to need support. I had no support in the beginning. In fact, I had discouragement in place of support, and I didn't know where to go for the support. And I wish that I had realized that, for one, I was going to need support, and for 2, to not stop fighting and looking for where to get that support from, not to give up so easily, because I did look for it, but I was looking in the wrong places. I should have gotten a little more assertive and aggressive at finding the support I needed, and I should have built a support team early on. Number 3, I would go back and tell myself to write down the list of reasons we chose homeschool for our family. And instead of stuffing it in a binder where I forgot about it, I would tell myself to put the reasons that we had chose it up in a place where I can see it from time to time, memorize it. Number 4, I wish I could say I found a formula one could follow that would assure 0 hard days, but there isn't one that I found. So I would like to go back and tell myself not to spend so much time and energy looking for that formula, and instead refer to that aforementioned list of reasons that I just talked about on those hard days. Number 5, this is kind of a lighter one, but I wish I could tell myself about Cathy Duffy reviews. I didn't know about Cathy Duffy reviews until I was homeschooling and quite a few years into homeschooling. And for years, I tried this and I tried that, and I spent money on curriculums that didn't work, so much money. But once I found Cathy Duffy website, it saved me hundreds of dollars. A couple quick tips for using the site. If you see an apple, the top of a review, it's one of Cathy Duffy's top picks, which means it's super amazing. Because it's super amazing doesn't mean it'll meet your needs though. So be sure to check out a little box. There's a little box that pops up when you're there, and it will help you quickly decipher. So be sure to check out the little box. It's over to the side when you're on the Cathy Duffy website, and it will tell you whether or not the curriculum is going to work for you in a kind of a glance. I would like to go back and tell myself that for the first month or more, if needed, with each child that I began homeschooling in our homeschool, to consider just sticking with the basics, phonics, reading, and math first, and to try the other subjects, but not sweat it if my younger children didn't seem to grasp what I was teaching. And I wish I could tell myself that, because I did not know that you don't have to sweat anything more than that, really. So much history and science gets repeated, usually a couple times before they end up graduating, and that's something I didn't know. Number 7, I would go back and tell myself to have more confidence and that I didn't need to start homeschooling as soon as I did. I made a huge mistake of starting too soon instead of going with my gut, and I forever have regretted it. I wish I could go back and tell myself to just go with my gut. Take time to research instead of jumping in before I was ready and before my child was ready. If I could go back and tell myself, you do not have to start just because some people think you should. I wish I could tell myself, just take this time to fill your mama learning cup. Research Waldorf, research Montessori, research Reggio Emilia, Charlotte Mason philosophies, research traditional teaching philosophies, and figure out what your philosophy is going to be. Then start. So I wish I would have known that. Number 8, I would tell myself that at the start of the school year, I should have freezer meals prepared and stocked for the first month, starting a new curriculum every year. Because for one, that first month is always going to be a doozy, even if it's not a new curriculum. But if it's a new curriculum too, oh my gosh, just get tons of food prepared, because by the time you're done learning that new curriculum and teaching a homeschool day, you're going to be completely tuckered out. And I remember years and years to when we had our 3rd child. My husband back then was a farm hand. And so he worked every year planting in the spring, and then in the fall, he would be harvesting, and then the summers usually had quite a bit of intense work too. So 3/4 of the year I was essentially single parenting it with 4 kids and homeschooling. And I wish that I would have thought of the trick to make a whole bunch of freezer food before the homeschool year starts, because I remember how intense those evenings are. It is so hard to cook a dinner when you got little babies crying at your feet wanting to be held. And when you've done a whole homeschool day and you've got that on top of it, it can just feel like too much. This is number 9. I wish I could go back and tell myself the organizing tips and tricks that I know now. I actually have a video for you guys with my best homeschool organization tips and tricks. Trying to stay organized early on was so hard. And I remember just the challenge. We had a very, very tiny home. And I remember just wishing I could go into a schoolroom or like another mama's homeschool space to see how she set it up and organized things. And I just wish I knew some of the organizing hacks that I know now. Early on, it would have made life a lot easier. When it comes to organization, I also would love to have gone back and told myself this just like right up front. Hey, teachers have teacher planning days. I didn't know this until like 10 years into my homeschool journey, that teachers will sometimes take time off to reorganize the rooms, reorganize the paperwork, curriculum. So I was always caught off guard when it came time to do that. And it was always like super irritating. Like, oh my gosh, my kids just destroyed this whole space. But hey, you know what? It's life. It happens. And I wish I knew earlier that I need to take like a day a month to go through and just reorganize the spaces and make sure the schoolwork is set to go and everything is just organized so that we know where everything is when it's time to find it. For years, we never finished on time. So we would end up homeschooling into the summer seasons. And I wish I could go back and tell myself 2 things regarding this. First one is that we didn't need to finish every page in every book or study for the excellence to the degree that we did. The second thing I would do is I would tell myself how to create and block off planned school days and the no school days at the beginning of the school year, like in July or June or, like whenever I was starting the school year. And I wish I would have told myself plan buffer days for sickness and unplanned interruptions. I wish I could go back and tell myself how to create a rhythm instead of a schedule with set times for the littler kids and the elementary and the middle school kids. There comes a time around middle school and especially in high school where you need a set schedule with some set times. Maybe not everybody's going to need that. In our home, we have to have that or things just don't get done. But with the littler kids, when you've got babies and toddlers in the mix, a schedule with set times isn't only not necessary. Like I said, it's necessary when the kids are older, but it's not when they're little. But that it was going to put unneeded and unnecessary stress on all of us. Okay, so like I said, as they get older, they do need to learn time management. It's critical. But it took me a lot of years to figure out how to do basically like a rhythm schooling or window schooling, they call it. There's all kinds of names for it now, but basically where you have a certain amount of subjects and you just want to fit them into a specific time of the day. For example, maybe you want to do language arts And this is what I do with my younger kids. Language arts, math, we try to get to science too. We try to get those done before noon. And then we have a certain set of subjects that we do after lunch. And this just works so much better for the younger kid. Go back and tell myself to keep one light day a week if possible, and one light week every couple months for whatever didn't get done, and for delight directed learning time, or for whatever there was going to be that needed attention. It took me a lot of years to figure that one out. And I would tell myself not to always rush and skip the curriculum intros, to take time a month in advance to a new school year or starting a new curriculum and just browse through it. Most curriculums have such helpful teaching tips and information on how to use the books and the curriculum, but a lot of homeschool moms in the first years don't realize this, and they don't schedule in that extra time. So the beginning of the school year hits and they are completely feeling like they've been run over by a bus or T-boned because there's all this extra learning. The kids aren't getting as much learning in because the moms are still trying to figure out how to use the curriculum and, understand the whole teaching methods and everything. Start early. When it says this is the first week, stretch that out over 2 weeks if you have to. And just take your time getting used to that new curriculum, because a strong start will keep you going through the year. I would tell myself that I would save a lot of time, money, and frustration if instead of laminating, wait for it, the daily schedules and plans, if I would instead take them on test runs so I could make adjustments during the first weeks. I remember sitting there for hours coming up with the most perfect schedules, then laminating it. And after the first day, realizing that I shouldn't have laminated it at all, probably. Okay, so I found to just take those schedules when you think you've got it all lined out, how your day is going to go, just print it off and put it in those those page paper protectors to protect them, but make it so you can pull it back out and adjust it as needed. During the first week of our homeschool year, you should see I will print mine up, but during that first week, I take it out so many times and I put red in all the places I want to change. I will red ink it all over the place to adjust it so that it will actually be something that does work for us. And then I go back and make those changes, and I do that however many times I need. And I will even do that partway into the year if I need to. I would love to go back and tell my past self there would be times I wasn't going to be able to homeschool, maintain the whole house, laundry, meal plan, and prep, homeschool, and be a parent and a wife and all of the things. And that I would need to start teaching my children at very early ages good habits instead of what I did instead, which was picking up after my kids way more than I should have. Okay, there was a situation with granola bar wrappers. Let me just tell you, for a whole, it's like a whole season, I kept finding these granola bar wrappers in every room on all the floors for months, thinking they must have been falling out of the trash can. The trash can must be overflowing all the time, which it often is, but they must just be falling out of the trash can and landing on the floor, and then they get accidentally blown by wind or tracked into other rooms. I was sitting there one day, I was nursing my baby, and I saw one of the kids. He went and got a granola bar, he walked into a different room. He's eating it, but when he was done, he just took the wrapper and dropped it on the floor. I didn't set enough time aside for teaching my children good habits when they were really little, and I really wish I could go back and tell myself, you better do that now because it gets a lot harder later. I would tell myself that I was going to want to be very intentional with my time, and I would have created more boundaries. I would love to go back and warn myself, again, confidence. In my first years as a homeschool parent, and again later, we moved to a new area, and then I had to go through it all over again for a while. But I had very little confidence, and I had to learn to be more assertive with my time and with people. And you will even run into this in some of the homeschool circles with other homeschoolers who don't use their time the way that you would like to use yours, or they do things differently. Maybe it's not wrong, they just do it differently. But you need to find out what's going to work for you. And for me, I needed to be very intentional with my time. And I wish I could go back and tell myself that there would be people that would challenge that, and I would need to be very firm. A lot of people assume that since you're home, that assumed schedule could and actually should flex around them. I would like to go back and tell myself, hey, it's okay. Make boundaries. Make them now because it's going to be harder to do later. And I would have told myself, kids' brains work the best in the mornings. So guard that morning time, especially to spend with them. And I would like to go back and tell myself, it's okay if you need to tell people, no, I'm not even going to answer the phone right now, or I can't do this for you, and to not feel guilty about that. I would love to go back and tell myself that asking other people what curriculum I should use was the wrong question. I remember asking people, what should I use for this? And what do you use for that? Doing that basically gets you a bunch of other people's opinions, but a lot of times only ends up costing time and money. And I wish I could go back and tell myself that the first question I should be asking and researching was just my educational philosophy and the different homeschool styles that are out there, because each curriculum it caters to one of these several homeschool styles. I'd like to go back and tell myself that although I had the freedom to dump curriculum that wasn't working, and that jumping curriculum is necessary sometimes, that doing so would take time out of the school year. So there's this huge movement in the homeschooling communities. If you haven't seen it yet, if you haven't heard it, I'll just tell you it's there, where a lot of moms that are just getting started in those first years will talk about how, hey, if you come to a place where a curriculum isn't working, just dump it and get something that does work. Yeah, sometimes that is necessary and you do have to do it. And I don't want to deter you from doing that if you do need to do that. But it's really important to know, and this is something I didn't know that would have been helpful to know, that I wish I could go back and tell myself, it's going to take time out of the school year to get used to a new curriculum. Every time you have to do that. So be warned. Like I said, this is a wrench that was thrown into our homeschool that I was very unprepared for. And I didn't learn the first time or the second time or the third time. It took me too long, I felt like, to learn that. 20, I would love to go back and tell myself that everything was going to be okay and that I could just trust God and relax a little bit more. But instead, I really stressed and had so much anxiety and a lot of tears because I was always sure I wasn't doing enough, that I was not doing things right, or that I was messing up. Number 21, I wish I could go back and tell myself that it would be okay and essential to take time off for self-care, that it would not be a waste of time, that it would be more like a lifeline to clarity that would be necessary to do this homeschool marathon. I would love to go back and tell myself, Shayla, it's okay to fill your cup. It's okay to take time off to research teaching methods, to prepare yourself. It might feel like a waste of time because, oh my gosh, when I started doing that, did it ever feel like a waste of time? But when I first started doing it, finally, 10 years into my homeschool journey, which was 2 years ago, it wasn't just a waste of time, but it actually made me more efficient and productive. 22, another thing I wish I had known in the beginning that really surprised me and surprises all the new homeschool moms getting started. And I did mention a little bit, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but so much in elementary school is repeated in middle school and again in high school. There are some things that do build upon each other, like language arts and math, and even in science. But I wish I knew that I didn't need to feel like such a failure when it didn't appear that my elementary kids were not grasping every jot and detail. The elementary years are supposed to be gentle years where you foster a love of learning and plant seeds that don't sprout now, they sprout later. Okay, so 23, I would go back and tell myself that this is a marathon. At times it can be beautiful and you can feel like you're running really strong. And other times it's so difficult that I wish I could tell myself that there would be times coming that would be so difficult that I was going to need to be strong for. And that I would need to work really hard not to let the hard overshadow the beauty, because I did that more often than I would like to admit. If I had known just this little piece, I wouldn't have been so blindsided when the hard times came. So many times I felt, like I mentioned earlier, T-boned and confused. I kept thinking I must be doing something terribly wrong, and I didn't realize that the hard was normal and didn't mean I was doing something wrong. So I wasted a lot of tears and anxiety and time looking for what I was doing wrong when I wasn't doing anything wrong at all. Hard is just hard sometimes. Okay, we're almost done, you guys. I've got just 2 more last pieces. 24, I would tell myself something that I didn't discover until after 9 years of homeschooling, that on my worst homeschool days, that I was still acing it. And I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that on my best homeschool days, that I was doing so much more than what was being done in a public school setting, and that over a 2 or 3 day time period, I could do way more and cover everything that was being done in a public school setting over a week or even more for most of the years. High school is a different ballpark, I'm telling you, and the last couple of grades in middle school are different too, okay? But for the other earlier years, you can do so much in a homeschool setting, more than you can do in a public school setting with less time. So many times we think that we're not doing enough when, yeah, sometimes we might not be. But the thing is that a lot of times we are doing a really good job. And I know that for myself. When I know that I'm doing a good job, I can do even better. And I learned this about myself, but I've also learned that when I'm feeling like I'm messing everything up and failing, my mental clarity, my energy, my willpower, everything just drains from me and I feel like giving up. And I wish I could go back and tell myself that I was doing better than I thought I was doing most days. There were so many days I was disarmed simply because I didn't believe I was doing things right, like I said, or that I was doing enough. If I had realized early on that I was doing better than I thought I was doing, I would have been able to do even better. Last tip, 25. Last thing I wish I knew is that God, He does make all things work for good. I have seen this play out in my life. I am seeing it play out in some areas that I really wondered how they were gonna work out. I've also learned something that I wish I could go back and tell myself and really understand and embrace. And it's that even if I did mess up, which I would, that God can and does make something of even that. And if you're doing your best and trying, I wish I would have understood early on that He would make something of it. In this line of work, every drop, I just want to say this, every drop you put into that educational bucket does count for something. You are investing in your children. And it may seem like you're not getting anywhere or they're not listening and they're not learning much so often, but it's not true. The hard work eventually does start paying off. I know that in our own homeschool, those early years, you feel like you're not really getting very far, but I am now into the high school years and the middle school years as well. And I can see everything that I did, it really does build up over time and the hard work does pay off. You just got to show up, be willing to do the work. And I wish I could go back and tell myself that that's how it would be. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, in the meantime, focus on relationships, good, healthy relationships. Because here's the thing, when you choose homeschooling, you're building your tribe. And it's a tribe that has the potential of being the best tribe for you imaginable on earth. Please leave a comment below. Tell me some of the things that you wish you had known that you would like to impart to other mamas out there that are just getting started in this journey. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications for more from me.